memory and in honor of my mother.
We're gathered together here for a special occasion. The Shloshim after Booba's Patira. She was with us for a very long time, and in hindsight, the years flew by very quickly. During that time, she touched and affected so many people's lives, especially her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren, who looked forward to her toys and treats. Just the other day, Meira asked Diane when Booba is coming back. Booba was very principled and straight. She did not hesitate to ask fundamental questions at the Shabbos table. During the Dvar Torah, she would ask, I'd be quoting some Rashi or Ramban or somebody, and she would ask, who said that? How do we know that? Her intellectual curiosity made her look for answers. She wanted tangible proof. Don't we all? When her grandchildren needed support to get through study crises, she taught them to have faith in Hashem, who would help them succeed. When she had to deal with illness, she relied on the ruble she inherited from her mother that had been blessed by the Jik of a Rebbe. She had faith in the power and goodness of Hashem. She had faith in the power of prayer, and for many years said Tehillim every day. By the end, her tattered Tehillim was held together with rubber bands. In the Rashi of today's Parsha, Hashem laments, Chaval al di'avdin v'lo mishtachim. Alas for those who are lost and can't be found. Hashem remembers the strong faith of each of the Avot to whom he promised the land of Israel. Even when Avraham had to buy a burial plot for Sarah, Yitzchak's wells were stopped up by the Philistines, Yaakov had to buy property in Shechem to settle his family. None of them complained that Hashem was not keeping his promise. Hashem mourns the passing of the Avot who accepted him unconditionally. And so we too take a page out of Hashem's book, mourn the loss of our dear Booba. She accepted each of us and loved us unconditionally. She expected the best of us and was certain we would live up to her expectations. She asked little and always gave so much. She is sorely missed. And now for the Siyum. A number of family and friends have learned the Mishnayos of Seder Moed for the Shloshim. Tonight we conclude Seder Moed. Seder Moed deals with all the holidays, beginning with Shabbos and ending with Chagiga, that deals with the sacrifices that the Bnei Yisrael brought in the temple during the holidays. Moed means appointed time. B'noadati l'cha sham. God says to Moshe, and I will meet with you there at that set time. On every holiday, the Bnei Yisrael meet with the Ribono Shel Olam at a set time to have a dialogue. The Rav designated these meetings as rendezvous. He loved that word. He called the meeting between the Bnei Yisrael and Hashem a rendezvous. He and we take time out of our busy schedules to be in the presence of the other. For the past month, each of us who learned Mishnayos in Booba's memory represented her in the rendezvous with Hashem. Together we all celebrated her magnificent and full life. May her memory be a blessing to the family, to her good friends, and to all who knew and loved her.
Amen.
The last Mishnah in Chagiga deals with the purification of the kalim, of the vessels in the Beis Hamikdash. When Jews would make the pilgrimage festival to Yerushalayim 3 times a year, so everybody would be tovel in the mikveh before they went into the Beis Hamikdash, before they went into Yerushalayim, because it was a holy holiday. and they wanted to be pure and be able to go in there with their sacrifices. Nevertheless, and then when they went into the Beis HaMikdash, they would touch various things in there. They would touch the altar, they would touch the vessels that were in the Beis HaMikdash. So after the holiday was over, the Mishnah is saying over here that they had to be tovel, they had to put into the mikveh, purify all those kalim that were in the Beis HaMikdash, because they were touched by the ordinary people. Now, even though these ordinary people, Amei Haaretz, were purified themselves on the Yontif, for the Yontif, nevertheless, the Chazal say that after the Yontif, in retrospect, the kalim that they touched became tamei, and therefore they had to be tovel, they had to be purified. So the last Mishnah says, Ketzan Mavirin al Taras HaAzara. How do they they remove the kalim, the utensils, in order to purify the Azara, the Beis HaMikdash. Matbilan es hakelim shehoy b'mikdash. They take these vessels that were in the Beis HaMikdash, and they dip them into a mikveh. And v'yomim lehem, and they say to the Kohanim, who may not have been too learned, Hizaru shalei tigu b'shulchan. Be careful, don't touch the table in the Beis HaMikdash, because if you touch the table and you make it impure, it's going to be a problem. You can't be tovel the table, because the table had to have the lechem aponim on constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Today we'd say 24/7. So there was no time in order to take this shulchan and dip it into the ocean, let's say, or not the ocean, but the Mediterranean. There's no time, there's no way you could do that. So they warned the Kohanim, don't touch this shulchan, this table. It's a tamu, because if you do, you will make it tamei. Kol hakelim shehoy b'mikdash, all the vessels that were in the Beis HaMikdash, yesh lehem shniyim v'shlishim. They would have duplicates and triplicates. Why? Shim nitmu harishonim, because if the first set of kalim, vessels, would become tamei, yaviu shniyim tachteim, so they would bring replacements to substitute for those that were tamei, and it wouldn't interrupt the service in the Beis HaMikdash. Kol hakelim shehoy b'mikdash tunin tefillah. All the vessels that were in the mikdash required immersion in a mikveh. Chutz mimizbeach hazav, except for the mizbeach that was in the heichal that was covered with gold, with the plated gold. Mizbeach hanechoshes, which was in the azara, which was plated with copper. Why don't they need tefillah? Because they are just like earth. And the Torah says, Mizbeach adom atasali, you have to make the Mizbeach out of earth, and then they covered it with the copper. So since the base of the Mizbeach was made out of earth, earth can't become tamei. So therefore Rabbi Eliezer says that they didn't need any immersion in a mikveh, because they never became tamei, even though they were covered with this gold and copper. The Chachamim say, Neshehem mitzupin. Two pshatim in the Chachamim. One pshat is that they argue with Rabbi Eliezer, and they say it's true, even though these were made out of earth, but since they were covered with gold and with copper that can become tamei, therefore they did become tamei, and you had to be tovel them. The other pshat is that even though they were covered with the gold and copper, but the gold and copper has become buckled to the wood out of which they were made. And pshute kleyetz or osir lenachas is not mekabel tamei, because a large wooden structure that is made to be sitting in one place, not made to be carried, cannot become tamei. So therefore, in the second pshat, they agree with Rabbi Eliezer that the golden altar and the copper altar did not become tamei. Hadrolach say the moed, hadrolach datolach say the moed. Datolach stashim non say the moed, stashim non lebialma hadin lebialma diosi. Hadrolach say the moed, hadrolach datolach say the moed. Datolach stashim non say the moed, stashim non lebialma hadin lebialma diosi. Hadrolach say the moed, hadrolach datolach say the moed. Datolach stashim non say the moed, stashim non lebialma hadin lebialma diosi. Harib Nor Nor Lehein Estivus Roskum Befinu, Befius Ampa Beis Yisrael, V'Nia Kolonu, and Nachnu Setzeinu. What's it? So Tzoi Ampa Beis Yisrael, Kolonu Yod Yishmecha, Lamin Esser Lishma. V'Yovet Techakbeni Mitzvah Seven Gilyolim Hili, Yili B'Yisomim B'Chukecha L'man Lo Yevosh, L'Olam Yeshkach B'Kutecha Kivam Chiyisani. Baruch Atah Adonai Lamdeni Chukecha, Amen, 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 Sela V'Ed. V'Dim Anachton V'Necha Nor Leheinu V'Levseinu, Kistamto Chalkeinu V'Yoshve Beis HaMidrash. V'Le'am Yoshve Kronos, She'anu Mashkimim Hem Mashkimim, Anu Mashkimim L'Dibei Soda, V'Hem Mashkimim L'Dvarim B'Telem, Anu Amelam V'Hem Amelam, Anu Amelam Kalvam Schar, V'Hem Amelam V'Yenam Kalvam Schar, Anu Rotzim V'Hem Rotzim, Anu Rotzim Chai Yolam Abba, V'Hem Rotzim L'Dibei Shachas, Shenema, V'Yato Elohim Toridem L'Dibei Shachas, An Shidamim Mimibel, L'Yechsu Yemeh V'Yeftach Bach, V'Som L'Fanecha Nor L'Hai, Shem She'ezatonu, the Simon say the Moed, Kent Hazel, the Haskell, Sedarim, the Sfarim, Achelim, the Simon, the Model, the Lamed, the Shmabel, the Social Kayem, the Skull of Esamet to the Serbi Ava, the Schus Kalatanoim, the Samida Chachamim, and the Skarim say the Moed, Tamod Lonu, the Zarenu, Latomish, Hatori Pinu, the Pizarenu, Bezera Zarenu, Adolam, Yiskayim be Bishalecha, Tancha Oscha, Bishachbacha, Tishmar Olecha, like it's also Hisachi Checha. Kivi Yiba Yomecha V'Sifel Chosh Nos Chaim Erech Yomim B'Mina Yisparla Oshe V'Chavod V'no Yoz Lama Yitain V'no Yivarech HaSavov HaShalom. Have a minute? Have a minute?
Now he's a dash right above. The mother of Hussein, the mother of Hussein. Who I said, the Chadet, the Haya, Messiah, Yasoka, Yasoka, Hayel, May. Carta the Rishoy, Shachwal, the Harikolo, Begeva, the Mekar, Fuchano, Nukhra, Mearo, Leasavo, Fuchano, Dishmayo, Yasre, Yamlef, Kache, Kutchob, Durfu, Malhusevi, Kore, Yatsma, Kore, Kore, Mishiche, Hamim, Meham, Haidol, Basis, Rabba, Rosman, Kore, Hey, Lahon Hansham Rabba, Pio Hesara, and the higher rate of his faith. Carmen Carnival, which might be out of in Rome. Shemayo, Haim Thermal, Uncle Israel, Shalom, remember Rabba, yes, Shalom, Uncle Israel, Okay, everybody please continue eating. So whatever you don't finish, you're going to have to finish. Everyone here is family, and is very close to my mother, to Booba, and the feelings are outpouring from everyone here, and we decided to keep it that way in terms of Shloshim, in terms of learning the Shnayos. And I think to us that's very special, that it's limited to this, I thought you didn't want to speak. This intimate and very special group. As a result, many people have opted to say a few words, and many other people wanted to speak, but are so emotionally involved, and it's really so close and so near that it's difficult. So those of us who feel capable of it and feel that their way is to express a few words and try to put into words as meager as they can be to express the feelings that are welling up inside at this time, we're going to invite to speak. In no particular order, I listed the people that I know of that want to say a few words. And I put my name at the end if we get to that. But first, I'd like to ask Devorah to come up, who has something, a message from Moshe in Israel that he sent. And Devorah graciously volunteers to convey the message.
always knew I was lucky to have a Booba. After all, nobody else had one. One of my earliest memories from the Lower East Side is getting off the school bus one block early on Fridays and going to visit Booba in her apartment on Montgomery Street. I always got a little present when I got there, a joke book, as she called a comic book, a Sesame Street finger puppet, or some other tchotchke. After we moved to Staten Island, we were lucky enough to have Booba come live with us. She had her own apartment and maintained her independence. When Jerry and Barbara would come to visit for Shabbat, they would eat upstairs around Booba's table, maybe joining us downstairs in our house for dessert after the meal. Her apartment was like a sanctuary for us kids. Some place to run away to, dip into the candy closet, and watch TV on the ancient black and white console. Having that apartment came in handy over the years. It gave Menachem a place to sleep and Dove a place to shower.
Quote unquote.
It was fun having Booba around to tell us exciting tales of commuting on the Domenico bus and about office life at Spirit. She always had some hard, crunchy, amorphous cookies in the white chisel. She was available to type up our term papers at record speed, first on the old manual typewriter, then later on the electric one, and to dispense sage advice about anything we were going through. As I got older, went to college, and got married, she was always there for all the important events. She loved a good party. She could not understand why we moved to Israel so far away. I knew there was no real way to explain it to her. She would always ask on the phone, "Do you like it there? And when are you coming back?" In a joking way, but half serious too. Still, I think she was proud of us, and we were very privileged to host her at our house a number of times in Renana and Orani. Family was the most important thing to her, and she retold stories of her childhood and her parents to make sure we would know about them. She made sure we always remembered Zaida. For years, she signed all her cards, Booba Plus. I always felt sad that she had died so young, and that he died so young, and that we barely got to know him, much less our children. It made us appreciate Booba even more. I'm very grateful that my kids have such wonderful grandparents and had the opportunity to know their great-grandparents as well, something we never had. It is strange to be sad now about Booba, since she was always so upbeat and positive. If she were here, she probably would tell us to stop all this talking about her right now. So I will just end by saying thank you for being our Booba for so long. We will remember the things you taught us, and we will really miss you.
Thank you, Devorah. Now, I'm gonna cross your name off the list. Personally, just as a reminder to me that we don't need to call you.
You want to sit there? I could sit here.
What does parentheses mean?
It's me for now.
Huh?
Later.
We'll do this as a team since you go from the list. Oh, Jason. Everyone will follow. Introduce you.
Was Uncle Jerry sitting there?
No one's saying
Evening. Tonight, I am going to speak for a very short time. And it's mainly just to introduce Aviva, something I don't ever do. And I encouraged Aviva to speak tonight, and she wanted to, and I saw an opportunity. I just wanted to mention one little thing about Booba. She meant a lot of things to a lot of people, many things to most people. There's one part about her that affected me the most, that always reminded me about her. She was always there for good times and bad times as well. And I think she had a unique ability to comfort people. And when my mother passed away, and on that terrible day that I experienced, she had a unique ability to turn something that for a moment was terrible and maybe reflect and understand that things aren't going to stay that way forever. I remember the first time I saw her on that day when I greeted her face to face. I was sitting down and she came up to me, and her, like many people, they come, they say sorry, we feel so bad, but it didn't really, it doesn't really speak to you. When Booba sat down, all she said was, one day, a long time ago, I was sitting down and my husband dropped dead, and that was it. And I felt very comforted, and it was just, but it was something very, very serious, because she had a loss to her that was very tragic to her. It was terrible, sudden, and she moved on, and she used that also to help comfort other people. And I felt, for me, it was very comforting, more than most people. It's something that is very special about her. It reminded me of the Gemara that about beginning of brachos, I think Rabbi Yochanan, he would walk around, he'd have, the Gemara would say, din garma da asira avir. He would have the bone of his 10th son that he'd carry on with him. And he used it as a measure of comfort to other people who were in suffering, or that had a sad, tragic event happen to them. He'd say, look at me, this is the bone of my 10th son. The other 9, I don't have anything, they died. The 10th one, this is his son. And he'd walk around comforting people with it, and he'd still be happy. And Booba was like that also. Viva pointed out to me that she'd always carry the picture of Manny wherever she would go. It's always like a reminder. Now, on the other extreme of things, the other story that reminded me about her, about a month after we had Eli Nachi, when I was still a father in training, everyone else went to the Hess concert that night. And Viva went, my in-laws went, everyone went, and I said, I'm going to watch Eli Nachi that night. I didn't really care about going to the concert. I'll watch Eli Nachi. And then Diana was there, Uncle Norman and Booba. And they were supposed to go. They weren't going to the concert. And all I know is that, they never really left. They were just staying around. But I said, no, go. It's not a big deal. I'll be fine. And they, no, we'll stay. We'll keep you company. And I thought, okay, they were just being nice. I felt afterwards, I realized, no, they were probably making sure that everything would be okay, and that he doesn't really know what he's doing. But I always had the sense that it was Booba who was the one that was encouraging to stay and making sure that everything was fine. I'm sure Uncle Norman was saying, he's fine, don't worry. Anyways, with that, Viva wanted to share some heartfelt words about how she felt.
Okay, it's hard to do somebody like Booba justice, but I'm just gonna write something short that I wrote up. Booba, it's so surreal that you're gone forever. It's hard to know what to focus on when you talk about somebody who touched so many lives, influenced so many people, and was such an integral part of my own growing up. Your sense of humor touched almost everyone you met. Booba was a name so many people knew you by adoringly. The connection you had with us, your family, was an especially unique one. You definitely always knew how to make us laugh, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. I've been missing our daily chats for quite some time, but I've always felt understood by you. You were always there to advise me on how to deal with life's challenges. You had an understanding of how to connect with people, and an incredible emunah in Hashem. From being with your great-grandchildren, who were always up for a trip to Booba's house, which was filled with treats and toys, to dating advice amongst my single friends, to cherished relationships that you kept up with your own friends for decades, to our own personal relationships where you were able to make us all feel special and like we were your special fave. Your wisdom, sense of humor, positive attitude towards life is evident in Daddy and Aunt Diane's personalities, and they're qualities that I aspire to. In this past month, I found myself asking myself, what would Booba do in a given situation? I wonder what advice she would have given and what she would think. She played a major role in molding me into who I am, and I hope I can continue to use her positive outlook, sense of humor, and wisdom to pave the future for me. We all miss you, Booba. You're special to each and every one of us uniquely, and we will always cherish you. Because as you know, Boobas like you are 1 in a million, or very few. We miss you.
Try and get the crowd in.
Michal?
Booba was such a big part of all of our lives, such a big influence on us, that it's hard to believe that she's really gone. I'm not sure what life without her is supposed to look like. Having Booba live with us meant things were never dull. Wherever she was, it was a party. We had this entire house at our disposal, and every night we hung out in Booba's living room. It was simply the best place to be. It was cozy, it always had the best TV in the house. There was a closet full of snacks, and best of all, there was Booba, eager to hear whatever you had on your mind. Her kitchen was the center of all the action. There was usually music playing or the radio on, and any night of the week, you'd walk in and there could be a home perm being given, an onion cookie or marab dough marathon, a checkbook being balanced, an intense sewing and tailoring session, or a fashion show if a simcha or a trip were on the horizon. Nobody else had a grandmother like her. How many people do we know who liked hanging out with their grandmother? It is a rare and precious thing, just as she was rare and precious. She was fun and funny, generous and caring, and fiercely protective of those she loved. She had spunk and attitude, which kept her young in spirit even when she was older in years. She did things her way, like dancing in the men's circle or pretty much every simple And wherever she was, she had a good time, except maybe in a restaurant, where she could never quite find the right thing to order. But aside from all the jokes and laughs, one thing about Booba was, if you needed her, she was there. When I was sick and my parents were away, my 82-year-old Booba came to stay and take care of me. To bring me food and come with me to the doctor. She insisted on staying in the hospital over Shabbos because she did everything for the people she loved. She taught us so much about what kind of person to be, and mostly by example. She never missed a day of davening and saying her Tehillim. She always had a present for every grandchild and great-grandchild on every occasion. Many times the same thing, so there would be no jealousy. She was industrious, outgoing, and always stressed the importance of family. She made us laugh and made us feel good about ourselves. But no matter how much we emulate her, there will always be only one Booba. Having her in our lives was a wonderful blessing. We love her and miss her every minute of every day.
John?
Well, it's hard to believe that this time has actually come. The time I have been dreading fearfully for so long. Somehow I had hoped that Booba would just live forever. Her loving, upbeat, warm, loyal, giving, nurturing, and fun-loving personality seemed so eternal. Booba was so centered to my life, to all of our lives, that I just can't believe she's not with us anymore. What's the hardest part for me? Is it when Menucha asks me, Booba awake now, mommy? I go, Booba's house now? Booba give me lollipop? Is it making that turn onto Norwich Street when my sisters and I always had a contest who could shout out Norwich first, demonstrating our excitement for seeing Booba? We knew fun things were in store as we arrived at her house and ran up the stairs. Is it that empty feeling at the end of the day or on Erev Shabbos when I usually spoke to Booba? How was your Shabbos, Booba? I would ask, and she would almost always answer, lonely without you. Or she would say, Simcha called me today and said he loved you. Growing up, if I ever felt sad, worried, or scared about just anything, I would always turn to Booba. I never had to be embarrassed or ashamed. Booba always reassured me. Whether I was feeling like the middle child again, I was nervous about a test, or I had cold feet before a date, Booba told me that Hashem was with me and he would help me all the way. He's with Aviva in the morning for her test, and I'm sending him right over to you. I believed her. Booba had such strong emunah. I felt closer to Hashem when I was with her.
Buba's reassuring voice, her positive and loving word, always made everything better. I remember as a young child having a sleepover at a friend's house and feeling so homesick and lonely specifically for Buba. She meant so much to me. I felt so taken care of when I was with her. All of us did. Buba had the ability to help so many people feel this way. It was the word that helped so many people through life's challenges as we relied on Buba so much. Just as in last week's Parsha Shmos, Hashem tells Moshe to go rescue Bnei Israel from Mitzrayim, and Moshe pleads to Hashem to give the job to someone else. He says, Lo ish devarim anochi, and he goes on, Ki kvad peh ukvad lashon anochi. Moshe is worried and scared, and Hashem gives Moshe the word. Hashem responds, who makes a mouth for a man, or who makes one dumb or deaf, or sighted or blind? Is it not I, Hashem? So now go. I shall be with your mouth and teach you what you should say. As Buba used to say, who knows the most? She was emulating Hashem in her ability to soothe our worries. To watch Daddy and Aunt Diane care for Buba was a very important lesson to me. They treated Buba like a queen during her good times and more recently when she was so sick. Whether bringing Buba lists of jokes to add to her repertoire or bring a smile to her face, making and buying every and any type of food to encourage her to eat, sitting with her for so long at home and at the hospital, it is impossible to count the ways Daddy and Aunt Diane gave so selflessly to Buba. It is clear that they internalized Buba's giving and loving nature. Buba was all of our best friend. It's hard to believe that I have to go on without my Buba in my life. I just want one more hug and to kiss her soft cheek. I envision Buba hugging Zaita Manny and all of her relatives she always talked to us about. I guess it's their turn now. I hope I can learn from all of Buba's many special qualities and make her proud by continuing her ways. She had such a love for life. She was so uncomfortable and sick towards the end. But I kept hoping things would turn around just a little, just to see her sparkle again and to be able to take care of us all just a little more. I love you, Buba. I miss you terribly. I hope you can see us and feel our love too.
When I was studying the Mishnayos, I studied the Mishnah and Tanis. That was my portion. And I found it interesting that the last few Mishnayos of Maseches Tanis basically shifted gears at the very last Mishnah. The last, the third to last and the second to last Mishnayos talk about the destruction and what kind of things happen on Shavas Arba Tammuz, on Tisha B'Av, the calamities, and we all know what caused that. It was Gilei Shvichas Damim and Avodah Zarah, and of course it was also Sinas Chinam. And then all of a sudden, the very last Mishnah totally shifts gears like 180 degrees and talks about the most amazing thing in the world. It talks about the happiest days in the Jewish year. And it says there are no days as happy for the Jewish people as Yom Kippurim and also Tu B'Av. And at first glance, one might think the reason why the Mishnah is switching gears so dramatically is to end on a happy note. But I was thinking, maybe there's something a little bit deeper involved. And I was thinking that perhaps the Mishnah was teaching us a lesson by not ending with the discussions of the calamities and the Avelis. Not just trying to end on a happy note, but rather the Tana is teaching us a lesson that even in our darkest times, at times of mourning, a time of uncertainty, of time of sadness, we can always still see the greatness of the Klal Yisrael. What does the Mishnah teach us? The Mishnah teaches us that on Tu B'Av, the Benos Yerushalayim would go out and they would dance, and that would be the time when anyone who was single would come out and they would see the Benos Yerushalayim. They were dancing, but they were dancing in their white dresses. Now these weren't any ordinary dresses, says the Mishnah. The Mishnah says these are dresses that were borrowed from one to the other. Nobody wore their own dress. Every one of their dresses was borrowed from somebody else. Why? Says the Mishnah, in order that the people shouldn't embarrass each other if they couldn't afford a dress. If someone was rich, they borrowed from someone who was poor. Everybody, so this way no one would have to know who would require to borrow a dress from somebody else. And I don't know, I was just very moved by that Mishnah. And it really shows you, Mikam Chayisrael, Goy Echad Ba'aretz. Who is like, when you watch, you look at the news and the tabloids and the television, and always you see all these people going to the Academy Awards, with the fanciest dress and the fanciest diamonds and this and that. And it's all about the vanity. And the Klal Yisrael ultimately are the most special people. Look how great we can become. And I think this is the lesson of the Mishnah. That even the times when we mourn our biggest losses, we know that ultimately the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael will prevail. We should not fear the future or mourn the past too much. Yes, it's important to learn from the past, but we have so much to look forward to. And ultimately, the B'nai and the Benos Yerushalayim will carry the day and will carry the torch. And this is a nechama, the Doros Yesharim that we have created. And I think this very much ties into what this Shloshim is about. It's really about the Doros Yesharim which were created. I think that all of Booba's grandchildren, I think Booba was able to see all of them have all of their chasnas, and she was also able to see all of them have children. And every one of them is Shomrei Torah mitzvahs, every one of them went to yeshivas, and Meher Neshama having Aliyah, certainly a very special person. And when we all take nechama in knowing that she was able to have real nachas every time that she was around everybody.
Johnny?
When Nava told me 2 nights ago, Thursday night, that she wasn't going to speak because she felt too emotional to speak so close, so when Booba passed away, so she asked me whether I was going to speak. And I thought that she wasn't expecting me to speak, being that I'm probably, of all the people here, probably knew Booba the shortest amount of time. But I thought at the same time, because of that reason, that maybe because I only knew her for such a short time, that maybe that could be maybe a reason why I should speak. That, I mean, again, I didn't know her for that long, but for the little time that I knew her, for the last year and a half that I've been part of the family, so everything that people have said over the course of the whole night of her jokes. I mean, the first time I met her, I was sitting at this table here on a date with Nava on Pesach 2 years ago. and I'm sure you could all imagine how that was going. She was just walking in and out of the dining room, walking through the kitchen every like 5 minutes. And every time he said, "Booba, do you want to stay with us?" No, you kids, you can play. And of course, every time just telling the jokes, this is the first time I had met her, first time I was hearing all these jokes, which I was getting a big kick out of. Everyone else is sitting there rolling their eyes, like the time. But I was definitely doing it. But also everything else everybody's saying, all the, how she's such an important part of everybody's life. I mean, it was so clear to me just seeing her even at the very end of her life, how still to the end of her life, she was still so close with all of her grandchildren, still she had such great effect. I was just thinking, I heard the other day, interesting idea that I've heard before, but after Booba passed away, and what I was thinking about coming here to Shabbos, what it would represent, for our Torah meant something different to me. It says at the beginning of Sefer Shmos, just very quickly, beginning of Sefer Shmos, it says, the pasuk says, "Ve'elish Shmos b'nei Yisrael habaim Mitzrayma, Es Yaakov Yishuv Esobo." These are the names of Bnei Yisrael that are coming to Mitzrayim. It's Lashon Hoveh, the present that are coming to Mitzrayim. And then it says that Yaakov and his family, they came. So the obvious question is, first of all, why is it saying in the present tense they're coming? All the Shvatim at this point are already dead. The Shibud Mitzrayim was about to start. The Shvatim are already dead, and it says they're coming now. Second question is, why do you need the word Shmos? So we always have lists of names in the Torah. It doesn't say these are the names. Why specifically the Shem? So a little much longer idea, but to make a long story short, right, what a Shem represents something of a person. For example, when the Shvatim were named, so each time it explains to you why they were named something. For example, Reuven, Leah said, "Ki ro'a Hashem azani," Hashem saw my pain, the Re'iyah. Shimon was, "Ki shama Hashem Isniosi," that is the Shmiya. And Levi also, that he was the Levi between Leah and Yaakov. Each name represents something. The idea being that a Shem isn't only the name of a person, but it represents their contribution to the people, to everyone around them. And therefore, that's why the pasuk says, "Ve'elish Shmos b'nei Yisrael haba Mitzrayim." It wasn't listing the names that were coming to Mitzrayim. It was listing the Shemos. Shemos being the representation, the contribution of what a person gave during the life. And even though the Shvatim now are dead, it lists their Shemos, what they contributed. Because what a person contributes to their family, to who's around them, never goes away. And even the Shvatim were gone, the Shemos were still living on. And that's why later on in the pasuk it says, "Bo," that they came in the past, when it lists what happened in the past. But in the future, in the present, is always the Shemos, even though the Shvatim were gone, what they gave. And I mean, this idea, which I was thinking about, it Nava always tells me, my closest relationship, obviously, to your family is through Nava. And she always...
Really?
She always tells me, of course, like Aviv was saying before, she just told me the other day that whenever she's dealing with Leo, or whenever she's dealing with anything, she always says, "What would Booba do in the situation?" Or when she has something she's not sure about, she just told me the other day how it's always, what would Booba do in the situation? I mean, just again, like being as sort of like an outsider looking at the family, she should tell you guys how lucky you were to have such an unbelievable grandmother. Someone who, again, I only knew for a very short time, but even had an effect on me in these ways. And how, even though she's passed away now, her Shem, the name Booba, obviously will always live on. And what that represents for everyone here, obviously, will always contribute to their lives in the future.
There's no manning the video.
I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. No, that's fine.
Growing up, something, I don't know if I ever even told anybody, but growing up I was always afraid and nervous as a kid that, what if Booba would die? I remember, thinking she was so old. As a little kid, you think anyone, right, is a little older than you is so old. In fact, on the way here in the car, Meira asked us if Eli Nachi is a grown-up. Just gives you a little perspective. And I was really always, for some reason, very nervous. Like, I don't remember exactly, but I would have like wake up in the morning and run into Booba's house, like make sure she was still there. And this would happen a lot. I guess that's just a sign of how much she meant to me and us, and just, always wanted her to be there. It's hard to believe that she's not here anymore. It's still, there's such a Shabbos with everyone here and such a gathering. She's supposed to be here entertaining everybody. It's hard to believe she's not here.
Booba, to all the grandchildren, Booba was really like a third parent. You know, one particular story, I'll just tell a few stories maybe, and let's say a short Dvar Torah. One particular story that comes to mind was once I went with her into shopping, to Macy's, and there was a shirt that I saw I wanted to buy. I think I must have been like in 8th grade or something, and it was like full price, it wasn't on sale. And I was very apprehensive to buy it, although I liked it, I thought it was nice. And yeah, I was like, I don't know, we should wait, maybe I'll look for something on the sale rack, you know. Booba's take was totally different. Buy it, enjoy it. That's what money is for. What's it for if not to spend it? And with that, Booba taught me how to spend money instead of always worrying. You know, instead of always worrying about it, but to learn how to enjoy it as well.
Thank you, Booba.
She also, this is something I mentioned to people over Shabbos, she also taught me, and apparently not enough people here, how to accept the compliment. You know, naturally I used to get like a little bit embarrassed if someone would ever give me a compliment. Booba said, you just smile and say thank you. You know, she had a certain confidence, the way she grew up, and her personality was such that, well, she was certainly not showy, but she had a certain confidence and know how to act with people, and just say thank you. I had a special relationship with her that I spent some time as her roommate, which was interesting, and always knew that if I were to abandon the bed in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom for any reason, when I got back it would be made, uninviting. So I really tried to make sure I took care of whatever I needed before I went to bed, so that, and make sure, hold on, grab that. A special chance she gave me when she got me a job working at the company where she, I think she's probably retired at the time, but she got me a job working there, and that was an interesting experience, and it's amazing to see how all these people in the office, how they adored her, and it was amazing. These most of them Irish people, old, young, different ages, and she was like their Booba. I mean, it was really incredible. As was mentioned before, all our friends, every one of my friends, you know, knew Booba. You know, there was only one Booba, it was an unusual name, but everyone knew her, and it was the jokes, as Yoni said, and even friends who were only at the house for the Ufrif, who met her that one time, really felt close to her. You could really go on forever with these stories. I want to say something that my father already mentioned, and even as I was preparing it, I sort of had a feeling that he was also going to be preparing the same thing, but I'll say it again anyway, because I have my own little way of saying it. In the beginning of the parsha, Hashem says to Moshe that he always appeared to the Avot as Kel Shakai, but not as the name Hashem. Now, the standard pshat, I'm used to this from SAR. The standard pshat, you guys are distracted. The standard pshat is that the name of Hashem is the name representing Hashem fulfilling His promises, as opposed to Kel Shakai, which is just the promises themselves. And indeed, in this week's parsha, we have the events of Yetziat Mitzrayim beginning to unfold. So Rashi quotes the Midrash, who has a little different approach. And the Midrash interprets Hashem remarks as reflecting poorly on Moshe. The Midrash here uses the phrase, as Dad said, "Chaval al di'avdin v'lo mishtachchen." That it's so sad that these certain people are not here anymore, and they're not here, they're not found amongst us anymore, lamenting the loss of the Avot. Now Hashem says, when I appeared to the Avot as Kel Shakai, and I made them promises, they never challenged me. They never asked me what my real name was. Lo hiruru achar midosai. They didn't question me. They didn't doubt me. Unlike you, Moshe did. What are the examples? When Avram had difficulty purchasing a burial place for Sarah in the very land that was promised to him, all of a sudden he's having a trouble, finding a piece of the land when it's all supposed to go to him. He didn't come with kindness to Hashem. When Yitzchak had trouble with the Plishtim over the wells, again, it was the land that was promised him, right? He could have complained to Hashem, what's going on? This is my land. He didn't come with kindness.
And similarly, Yaakov, when he had to purchase land outside Shechem, he didn't come again challenging the promises. Lo hiru achar midosai. But you, Moshe, complain and ask, why am I inflicting hardship on the people? Lama hariosa lama zeh. You're challenging me, you're doubting me. And so Hashem is lamenting, and he misses the avot. He says, Moshe, like, I would prefer, if the avot were here instead of you. So, just to take it a little bit, obviously apply it to our situation, as Uncle Jerry pointed out during the Shiva, one of the conversations that was ongoing in the Shiva, was that Booba, although she was always fun and funny and positive, did not really have like such an easy life growing up. I mean, she did grow up in America, so she didn't go through the events in Europe, but the family did not have a lot of money growing up, and mainly really her husband, the love of her life, died at such a young age. I always wondered actually if Booba, like if she changed, I don't know, if that event really changed her, and if maybe she was never the same since then. I don't really know, but it seemed like there was a part of her that was a little bit sad always because of that, even though she didn't show it that much. But it seemed that lo hiru achar midota, that even though she went through whatever she went through, she never seemed to, at least with us, she never challenged and questioned God's ways. Her emunah was always rock solid. As a child, I remember the lullabies she would sing us. Anyone here remember the lullabies?
Yes,
God knows what he does. He's the king of all the Jews. I guess that was the original poem. God in his judgment he's got right. If Dassin say that God is wrong, God knows what he does. He's the king of all the Jews. She did?
Sang it in the hospital.
Really?
What? What'd you
Then
say?
there was the Yiddish verse.
She sang it in the hospital. Really?
Gott weiß, was tut, der ist der König von
Gott in sein Mishpat
Is
is
good
good
at
at.
it. Yeah. So, in addition, as Uncle Jay also pointed out at the time, that it's remarkable that her attitude towards life was always so positive and not sad. Booba taught us that although the circumstances are not always in our control, at least our perspective is. She never complained. She loved life, she loved babies, she loved dancing, she loved fun, she was really always positive. So Hashem said, Chaval al di'avdim v'lo mishtachin regarding the Avot, but Booba is really the matriarch of our family. She was such an important part of our lives that her absence is felt in each of our lives now on a daily basis. But in truth, what I've realized over the past month is that although Booba is no longer here physically, I still feel her spirit in my life every day. Her jokes, her stories, and her life lessons really continue to impact on me and our family on a daily basis. And in that way, even though she's not here, she really is here, and she always will be here. Yehi Zechra Baruch.
I just crossed myself with the list.
No.
I don't have a completely gelled comments, and I think that's appropriate because I don't really feel completely gelled and together about this experience. I'm not really sure why we're doing it. Is it really necessary, as Diane expressed before everybody came here tonight?
Blame it on
Why are we doing it? For whom is it? Is it for mommy? Is it for us? Is it Shloshim sometimes? Is it a larger audience? Is it for other people? And really, it reflects a sort of state of confusion that we feel, I'm sure that we all in this room feel, with the loss that we're experiencing, even though as clear, she had a long life, she made it a good life, was good to a large extent, but she made it even better than it was. But regardless of that, it wasn't enough. And it leaves us all with a void. And reflecting over the past month, trying to make some sense, you know, it throws you into this mode of trying to make sense of what is really with you all times, because life and death are all part of each other, although we don't reflect on death when we're living most of the time. Reminded me of something I heard by Rabbi Moshe Weinberger. Pointed out that we have a fourth bracha in Birchas Hamazon Hatov HaMeitiv, which was established about after Harugei Beitar. Harugei Beitar, a great miracle happened. There was a battle, and many of them, how many were there, Harugei Beitar? How many? 36,000 people were killed, and they lie on the battlefield, and a great miracle happened. What was the miracle? Their bodies didn't decompose, and they were brought to burial. And Rabbi Moshe Weinberger asked, you know, that sounds like a pretty good feat if you can carry it off, but if you really want a big miracle to establish and to celebrate by putting a bracha into Birchas Hamazon, which is so often said, bring them back to life. Let them rejoin their families. Not decomposing, being brought to burial. And he pointed out that the importance of that miracle was that it served as a reminder that it was not just a happenstance, that God was there. And even though we can't understand it, we can find some comfort knowing that at least it's divinely decreed, and that it's not just a mikra, it's not just circumstance, it's not just chaos, and there is some rhyme or reason. It's a sign. It's a sign, so I was thinking that Mommy also looked for signs. I remember a story during a period in her life, I don't remember exactly, a few years ago. She was recovering from an operation, or she was just not really doing well, and she was feeling very weak and exhausted and couldn't really do the things that she wanted to do, but yet she was getting around. And she told me, with a lot of happiness, one night I came home, she said, I had a sign. I was in the mall, and I went outside to wait for Diane to get the car or something. And I'm saying to myself, I feel so exhausted, I have to sleep so much, this hurts me, that hurts me. What? Is there any way out of this? And I looked up and I said to God, God, give me a sign. Am I ever going to get any, am I going to creep out of this? I sat down on the bench and I looked down, and there was a coin, heads up. And I knew that that was a sign. And her attitude, she was so happy. You remember that story? She was so happy with that because she had the sign, she asked for a sign, and she got it. So I looked for a sign. And looking for the sign, I did a search for the name Miriam in Tanakh and in some of its Mefarshim. I mentioned at the cemetery the pasuk of Miriam's death, but one of the other psukim that came up was a Rashi in Koheles on the verse of Tov Yom Hamaves Miyom Hivoldo. is better, the day of your death is better than the day of being born. And Rashi there says, Miriam. When Miriam was born, nobody knew who she was. And when she died, Nistalka Habe'er, the well left, and everyone knew. Sham Miriam, Vatikaver Sham, V'lo Hayamayim La'eda. Miriam died. Nobody needs the translation here, but if Booba were here, she would want me to translate it so that she can understand. She was buried there, and the people had no water. This appears in Parshas Chukas. Parshas Chukas is the parsha of the Paraduma. The Paraduma is a preeminent chok. Chok is a law that we don't know the reason for. How appropriate that the death of Miriam is juxtaposed to Paraduma, which we don't know the reason for. We don't know the reason for death. We don't know the reason for the death of Miriam. But we do hope, we do know that it's not a happenstance. Miriam is associated with the Be'er Mayim. So I was thinking about the characteristics of water and how they might apply. And I was thinking that Mayim is very simple. Simplest form of mashke. Mami was simple. Mayim is clear, transparent. Sees what you get. Mami was that way. Water is pure. Nothing added to it. Very adaptable. Fills a liquid. Reflection of that original knowledge base that they received from the Malach in the womb. And therefore the Amoroyim reinforced that by finding the source in the Torah. You see, the fishmonger said that, and it's very wise, but it's a Torah truism, because Jewish folk wisdom is that. And Booba didn't have a lot of formal Jewish education, but she had this wisdom, which you heard about here. So Torah, and Torah is Torah's emes, truthfulness. Diane can attest to the fact that one of the main things that she tried to teach us growing up is to always tell the truth, and to always be honest. I remember clearly, I don't know why it stands out so much, they used to have payphones. And sometimes when you had a payphone, you made a phone call, and as soon as you hung up, it started to ring again. And you pick up, and they say you didn't put in enough money, or you went overtime, put in another dime, put in another nickel. And I came up from the street, they'd used a payphone in the corner, and it was ringing, and my mother made me go back down to put more money in the payphone. Water is stable, durable, consistent, reliable. Booba, as you heard from others, was a source of unconditional love for everyone here, family and friends. And water also contains within it great potential, because you need it to do anything, any recipes, anything you make with it. And she recognized potential and was able to try to bring it out. Other signs I looked for regarding Miriam and the Tanakh, I learned that the reason she was called Miriam is from Vayimareru es Chayehem. When the lives of the Jewish people became bitter in Mitzrayim, that's when Miriam was born. And because there were bitter times, from the word Vayimareru, she was named Miriam. And her birth perhaps was beginning to counteract the misery and the troubles that the Jews found themselves at that time. She had the attributes that were needed to address these tsaros. In what way? She convinced Yocheved and Amram to have more children, which led to the birth of Moshe. She went out and spied on Bas Paro to protect Moshe. I'm sure if we all close our eyes, we can picture Booba doing that. Shifra and Pua. Pua was Miriam, because she loved little children and she loved babies. And she could swaddle them better than anybody else. Other characteristics that perhaps reach out from Torah to give us a sign. V'tidaber Miriam v'Aharon b'Moshe alodos ha'isha hakushis v'shem alodos ha'isha hakushis. Miriam was punished for this, but Chazal tell us that Miriam is mentioned before Aharon because she spoke first. When she saw something that was wrong, and she thought Moshe was doing something wrong, she spoke out first. And I'm sorry my uncle's not here tonight, but he told us during Shiva, your mother was something. If I strayed a little bit, she would tell me, that's not right, Nady. I'm going to tell Papa. And then she said, Nady, you wearing tzitzis? And I'd say, yes, yes. And she would say, show me. V'shem Eshes Amram Yocheved Bas Levi Asher Yolda Osam LeLevi B'Mitzrayim Vateled LiAmram Es Aharon V'es Moshe V'es Miriam Achosam. Of all the siblings, the term Achosam is applied to Miriam, because I guess the relationship was so important to her, the family relationship. How important was family relationship to Booba? We were going through her papers, as most of you know. She had a little bit of a will, and at the end of the will she had some handwritten notes, and she said, just remain close. I have my ways of knowing. Relationship, a daughter. We recounted the story when she had the opportunity to move to a better apartment. And she showed the letter of acceptance of the apartment to her father, and he said, "You gave me Ribbelazen, you're going to leave me?" Upon which she ripped it up. And the dedication she had over many years that Diane remembers well, taking care of our grandparents. A sister, a friend, a mother, a Booba. Vatikach Miriam Hanavia Achos Aaron Es Hatov Biyada. As Yashir was Moshe's contribution. But Miriam took the tambourine and went out to dance with the women in this case. It's slightly different. The other word that came out of my search was Miriam, Mem Reshud Mem, but it wasn't Miriam, it was Merim, from the word to lift up, uplifting. But Thomas Miriam Shom, but Tikaver Shom. Shom is written twice. The Medrash says, Samach Lumisa Kvura. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Af Miriam Benishika Mesa. Samach Lumisa Kvura. Friday morning, she passed away. 10 after 10, Shabbos was a little after 4. I looked at Diane, she looked at me. Should we try to have the kfura today? After 5 or 10 minutes, we decided to try. Chevra Kadisha said it wouldn't be possible, but we persisted. We had some help from people in the hospital. Samoch Lemisa Kvura, Af Miriam B'Meshika Mesa. The other connection that is pointed out of the relationship between Hora Aduma and Misas Miriam is Ma Hora Aduma Mechaperes Af Misason Shel Tzadikim Mechaperes. It's curious that the Torah picks the death of Miriam in particular to teach us this lesson. So it was a great zechus, the Be'er Mayim, the zechus of Miriam. But in fact and in truth, it didn't start with her. I'm reminded of, we once had a speech in Shul by Shneur Lyman, who said there's Rashi Tefillin, there's Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, and they had the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they found Tefillin, and they said, okay, we'll finally figure out which is the right order of Parshios, and in fact, he said they found both orders in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So this was a machlokas that obviously preceded Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. So too was the Be'er Miriam. Mishnah in Avos tells us, Asara Devarim Nivru Be'erev Shabbos Bein Hashmashos. One of them was Piha Be'er. Erev Shabbos, but of the days of creation, certain things were created that later were pulled out and used as miracles, and one of them was this well of Miriam. And it was actually used in Tanakh before Miriam pulled it out for the Midbar. It was the same Be'er that Yishmael was able to access to be saved with. And after Miriam died, it was accessed as well by Moshe when he got water for the people. But she was able to somehow tap into it and to have it persist, and it was a well that not only people went to fetch water from, but at times it's also described as a stream which would come out and actually deliver water right to your house before, hot and cold running water. She was able to tap into it and to reveal it and to make it available for Klal Yisrael when they needed it. I once heard that Zechus Avos, an interesting concept. We always think of it as the Avos were so tzaddikim and their Zechus should stand for us. But I once heard someone say, I forget whom, that Zechus Avos can also be understood that we have a tremendous Zechus because we are a link between the previous generations and the generations to follow. And that is the Zechus Avos, the Zechus of generations. No matter how well we meet up to it or not, we're still a connection. And by virtue of our future generations, we keep the line going. Many years ago, at the wedding of my parents, they were wished and blessed to build a bayis binyan adeyad. But we know nothing is forever. People are mortal. The binyan adeyad refers to future generations. The Be'er Miriam is not something fixed in time. Why Hashem created a world where people are born and people die, we can't understand. But the qualities are there. The Be'er Miriam was created qualities are there, and as you heard, they've been incorporated, they'll be clung to, they'll be passed down, they'll be reinterpreted and reapplied. Mommy was able to absorb the best qualities and lessons from previous generations and incorporated them into a world outlook of Weltanschauung filled with optimism, positivity, giving, but more than giving, joy of giving. Her giving was what fulfilled her. And most importantly, unconditional love. The challenge for us is to pass it on.
I just want to thank you all for learning in the schus of our mother's neshama, and also to mention that besides the family and friends that are here tonight, our children in Florida, Dov and Debbie, also learned Mishnayos for her neshama. Our children in Oranit in Israel, Moshe and Rebecca. In fact, Rebecca gave a shir today in her memory. She volunteered to give the women's shir. And also, right, on the subject of her name. And also my nephew Mark in Yerushalayim, and Chaya Bela. And our granddaughter Aderet made a PowerPoint presentation on the computer with pictures that she culled from Moshe's. That if anybody wants to see it, they can see it in the den. And just thank you all. It was very meaningful to us that you all participated.
She didn't want to talk. Okay. Amen.
Okay, with food?
Of little poems that she obviously had written in birthday cards and other communications with family members and friends. Very neatly compiled, things that we all received and threw away. But she went through a phase where she, I guess, felt very good about them, and she kept them. So since she kept them, I felt we should keep them, and I put them in this binder. So anybody that wants to look at it, I'm sure Nolan and Michelle do.